This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jumrukovsky, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hi, this is Peter Jumrukovsky, and I'm the host of the I Love Success podcast. Thank you for watching this because today's episode is going to be really interesting. I have Keith Mitchell, a former NFL player turned yogi here today. In an instant, he got injured and could never play the game of football anymore. That forced him to change, and through meditation and yoga, he became another human being. In today's episode, we talk about being a killer who has that motor, that drive to become an NFL player, but also what you do when you have to change, and how breathing, yoga, and meditation have changed Keith's life. And it could change your life too. So if you're into goal settings, if you're into creating a good life, keep watching. Here we go. Welcome, Keith Mitchell.
Hey, thanks for having me, Peter.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. I love having athletes on because usually there's so much behind becoming an athlete, and of course your journey has been much more than just an athlete. But let's start with Keith Mitchell. Who are you really as a person?
Who is Keith Mitchell? Well, I'm discovering that every single day. And I'm open to that. I'm cool with the unknown of just letting Keith Mitchell evolve in so many different ways. In particular, that one dynamic you mentioning for his healing. And I've been really focusing on ideas and how I can heal myself, which equally equate to working with other people to suggest healing for them. So I think it's the medicine that we're here to be, not only just for ourselves, or by being it for ourselves, it rolls out for other people. Yeah.
We're going to talk a lot more about that, of course. But let's start with Keith Mitchell as a kid. Where did you grow up and why did you want to play football?
Well, I grew up in Texas, and Texas football, Friday Night Lights is like a big thing. We have thousands of people in the stands for the football games there. So to fit in, to be cool and be liked in school, you gotta that's the thing you gotta do. And I was able to do it well.
And I heard somewhere that your mom wasn't very fond of this idea of you playing football.
No, she wasn't fond of me playing it, and that's why martial arts was the thing that they allowed me to do, Taekwondo. Yeah. And that was one of the things that's supposed to get me tough, right? And also a discipline. And I learned so much from that. And by the time I could convince my mom to let me play, I think I was aesthetically there, but, it was still another learning curve to learn how to play the game of football, and I had to catch on quick.
Yeah. How old were you when you started?
I was 13, and, the first year, they really put me out there because I was a tall kid, and I looked good in pads, but I wasn't effective, So my parents, to let them keep me playing, they would ask me when they would pick me up after the games, like, how'd you do? And I'll make up these outrageous stats because I knew if I had told them I was sitting on the bench the whole time, they wouldn't let me continue to play. So I had to make up a lot of stats. It's like, I had 20 tackles, I had a touchdown and blah, 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 and really just sat on the bench or, just was out there as a decoy. So, yeah.
I love that. So you look good, but
that
you weren't playing effectively.
Yeah.
So how did you become good at football? Because I remember myself doing karate. I wasn't good or effective at all, but I wanted to be good.
Yeah.
So how did your journey, like when did you realize, okay, I can do this and become pretty good at it?
Well, it's a commitment. It was one of those things. I was raised by a military Pentecostal preacher, so I had been bred to be. My father was very hard, and I grew up in that type of environment, I guess. And that was the tool that you need to play in such a violent game, I guess. For me, it equated when a coach actually, they moved me to defense. and it was a coach who learned me how to turn it on. Turning on is in another way when it comes to football is a level of insanity, or as I know it from a mindfulness practice, it's an accessing of power, and power has a polarity. You can go one way or the other. They call it good or so-called bad, but it's accessing that power, that motor, to like be unstoppable. And when I learned how to access that, game was over.
This is very interesting. How did you learn that, and how old were you at that point?
I was 14, and so much of the game is mental. Like a lot of times when I go out and talk, I talk about mindfulness and the life, the game that we play in life, and it's the same way. It's your attitude, it's your mindset. You can look at it as a challenge, or you can look at it as an opportunity. But if you look at it as an opportunity, you'll realize it forces us to grow. And so for me in sports, it was again, not really knowing, but I was looking at it as an opportunity. And when the opportunity that I found at that moment, when I learned how to access this energy, I was like, well, I want to be recruited by every school in the country to play for them in college.
And you realized that when you were 14?
Yes.
So your motor, your passion was to get an education, or was it the love of the game of football?
Well, it really was just the unknown. It was more or less not necessarily, I can't say I was thinking all about education. I was thinking it as like my parents, I don't know if they could afford me to pay for me to go to school. And then why can't I get it on my own? And, in this, as I began to progress and have this mindset, I'm sitting here looking at other guys who, they look just like me. They're putting their pads on just like me, and they're getting recruited. Well, if they're getting recruited, why can't I? And I'm like, that's attainable. That was tangible for me. I could touch it. I'm like, that guy is human. Sometimes we get these realizations or ideas that people just, they're built different. They're like, they have something different than we all have. But it's not. It's not so. And when I realized that, I'm like, this is mine. I'm having this. And I began to create it. And, the thing that comes with the mindset or putting a goal, or we call it intention out, I mean, you still have to do the work. And there's a lot of work to be done in triple-digit climates in Dallas, Texas. I can tell you, there's a lot of work had to be done.
But I love what you're saying with the motor, because there's so many, we can call them Ferraris or Lamborghinis out there just sitting in the garage, right? But I mean, there's so many people that they're waiting to someone to give them that motor. They want to do something, but they might think, no, look at Keith, he is different than me. Mm-hmm. No, you're just a human being, right?
Yeah,
but how do you see that? How do you get that motor going? Do you have any tips and ideas for people out there, like they want to be really good at what they do?
Well, it's one of those things, actually identify what do you want, write it down. And put it like, we talk about mantras and meditation. Put it in a place where you can see it every day. Put it on your phone. Put it in when you go to the restroom and you have it on your, on the glass, in the mirror there. Put it in your preference so you can see it. And the more you see it, it becomes repetition. And more through repetition, it becomes more tangible for you. You can envision it, and you can feel it, you can taste it, and you think about it every day. And it calls you, and you have to be bold to like trust it and let yourself be out there. And when I say get out there, also be, okay with failure, coming short, and realizing it doesn't define me coming up short. That means I can just get back on my practice and continue my journey. I think that's really what it equates to, in my opinion.
I love what you're saying. But let's go back to when you were a young player. Did you have that mindset, or were you more like killer wise? I gotta win. Because I remember when I was competing at that point, I was like, I gotta win. Mm-hmm. I put so much pressure on me, and this, like what we are talking about now, this is a different level and a different stage. I wish I had this mindset, like when I was like 15, 20 years. Can we just talk about, did you have that mindset then, or what was your mindset of becoming really good as a football player at that point?
Well, really, when I think about it, and again, it's back to the healing component. One of the conversations I had with my father was like, I'm thinking about playing. I want to play football. I think I can be good at it. And he mentioned to me, well, maybe you should try something else. And from that conversation, I took it as a negative.
Why did he say that?
Well, he was like, well, thinking that, well, the obstacles or the statistics of making it on that level in that industry can be challenging. And he's like, maybe you should look at something else. But the point of it is I took it as a negative. And what I feel is from that in life, we take misunderstandings like that and we make stories out of it. And even though we go out and do some really amazing things and some powerful things like what I did with sports, but I'm taking it from a victim state. I'm building something because I'm trying to prove something
you want
to
to
someone.
prove your father?
Yeah. And see, the thing is that if we start out like that, because how you start it will be how you will have to sustain what you do. So what I've learned is from that is how you want to begin, the foundation that you create from, it has to be from pure just knowing that I have this capability. But me not knowing this in high school, from that one little story, I'm like, okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that I can be better than what you're thinking I can be. Yeah. And again, just making this story, but again, back to the power, accessing this mindset and realizing what's capable for us when we put our minds into it, but not necessarily from doing it from the way I came from it, but doing it from how I choose to do it now because I can as a human being. I am that Ferrari just ready to go.
I love it. It's so difficult though. If we look at some of the people in the world that excel in music, in artistry, in acting, in sports, a lot of their drive early on comes from pain, comes from proving someone wrong. I'm from a family who doesn't have money. I'm going to create something of myself. I'm from a country where I'm poor, but if I become a champion, it will change my life. So don't you think that that pain can be a good driver as well?
Well, it's the foundation of what you're building with. Think of this as tools that you're putting the concrete, you're laying the basic pipes from. And I'm saying it's interesting how it works, but at the end of the day, in a competitive environment such as high-level sports, music business, well, the inevitable is you're going to go into a decline. Yeah. You're going to be maybe less popular than you started out. It's your prime. So is that going to set me up for the sustainability? And then what happens when I begin to crash? Now you have an identity crisis. Now you have just a midlife crisis. So how do you keep yourself from losing it when that's all you've given yourself an opportunity to do?
That's crazy. I remember because I was very bad in sports in the beginning, but I was always there competing anyways. And karate is a small sport, so you got to know most of the people. But I remember a lot of the athletes, they didn't respect me because I wasn't that good. Mm-hmm. And I remember that. But then when I started beating good guys,
yeah,
then all of a sudden I was allowed in the room, right? And I didn't like that because I always remember that. And I tried to work from a standpoint, just because I have been that person that people don't care about just because it's not good. Mm-hmm. I want to try to respect everybody. And it's hard to forget that. Have you ever felt that, been a victim of that? Or have you yourself been like that with people that are new and not that good?
Well, how I look at it is just, different, sports have the different natures, How I look at it is say, if I've been looking at dominating someone my whole life in sports, right? So when I interact with someone after sports, well, then that residue, and looking at that residue and seeing how I'm looking at the man, or saying I'm having an interaction with the man, I'm sizing him up, looking at his weakness, looking for his weaknesses, because I've been trained to dominate this person. But now when I began to realize I don't have to do that anymore, I'm not playing the sports, really an idea of healing, I began to let that go, because then I start to realize how it creates barriers of me to having interaction and connection with other men. Yeah. Just being cordial, being cool, hey, what's up? We're not competing here, we're just hanging out, things like that. So I began to just see the good things that I learned in sports and that serve me to my intention that I hold now. And then the things that don't serve me, I began to just let those things go. but I observe it, I honor the experience with it, but I let it go.
Do you think you have to be that killer to become like one of the best in a given sport?
Of course you do.
Nice guy to finish last, that's true.
Pretty much. Because again, it's so competitive. Think of it. You have 32 teams. How many universities do we have? And then everybody's always coming for your position. It's like, you have to be on. You cannot, on that level, turn it off. If you turn it off, you compromise your leverage. I always say you can aesthetically, I'm 6'3", I used to be about 250. You can find those aesthetics everywhere. What makes you different than that other person? And it's all mental. The game is about 80% mental, 20% physical.
That's great. So how did that make you feel? Because I remember when I was young and hungry like a lion, I didn't mind like punching people in the face and like winning. But the older I got and the more spiritual I got, because being a martial artist, also a lot of meditation and spirituality, the older I got, I started thinking, no, I don't know if I want to be nice to this guy. Mm-hmm. And once you start thinking like that, it's not good from an athlete's perspective, but as a human being, it's great, right?
It's like we adapt, and we're holding these guards up because of certain things that we've been told, certain traumas that we hold, misunderstandings. And what I've learned is the best position to be is just allowing you to be, and realizing what you want, your intention, setting that and holding that. A lot of times we're chasing things, this idea, even what you mentioned earlier about success, it's not our definition. It's society's ideas of success, and we're trying to attain that. And it's not bringing us fulfillment, it's not bringing us happiness, and we suffer ultimately for that.
Yeah, we do. But isn't like attraction also comes from this animalistic way of thinking, like the lion gets the best things, right? Isn't it like that? Like even in this world that we are living today, that the people that are strong, that they take what they want, aren't those the people that usually excel most?
Well, those are people that actually become isolated most. Those are people mostly have the midlife crisis and creates the Donald Trumps of the world and things like that. I think ultimately, we can create a new paradigm, because even as you're, it's so cool because you're an athlete and, the dynamic of what we do for us in these violent games that we played, how much brute force do we actually use? We use maybe, 20%? The rest is finesse. Yeah. So why are we going through life so hard? We're exhausting ourselves, and we don't have to do it. We can be more efficient. We can be fluid, like Bruce Lee, like water. Yeah. And in that's open. Yeah. So now when I'm open, I can learn more. I don't have to be so hardwired, closed off. I can be flexible, so when life is happening, I'm not jarred one way or the other, but I can just be fluid. And that's the way I want to live, because all the other things I've lived and I was just miserable. I was lonely. I didn't have connections, and I couldn't talk to people because they're looking at you like you have everything. But then internally, I'm like, I'm empty. I don't have anything. And they don't understand this. So how I see a lot of successful people, even in the classes I get a chance to go and teach, and I see a lot of people, like one of the things I have in my class, I ask people, stand up and tell us something that you like about yourself. And these are successful business people all over the world. And they can't mention anything that they like about themselves. And I'm like, that's okay, because we can start today. We can find that one thing and we can build off of it. And I think that's the paradigm that we want to create.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if we can gain more of that, it's incredible. Can you talk more about that? You talked about like I had it all in other people's eyes, but I feel empty. Can you describe what it was that you had and how it felt to be lonely in that situation? Because you were drafted. What year were you drafted?
That was 96.
96.
Yeah.
And you did like 7 seasons in NFL, right?
Yes.
So let's just talk about that, because being an NFL player is probably one of the biggest sports in the world, right? And you were playing in the highest league. Mm-hmm. So you're really, really making it, right?
Right.
And can you just talk about that? And when was the moment you felt that you were empty?
So, my whole time really, my engagement with people, is more or less, I'm the athlete. You're convinced that you're like something different than everyone else. What brought my life to a realization of all my emptiness is because a lot of times even these emotions come up and we denounce it. We don't acknowledge it. We just kind of sweep it under the rug, so to speak. And for me, when I had my really defining moments is when I injured my neck. I had a spinal contusion. I was in the hospital, and I had the homes, I had all the cars, and it all really just came to a head because I have all these cars, I have these homes. I'm isolated to one room. I can't drive the cars. So then what are they for? And then where are the friends? Where are they really? When I really need that interaction. So it's like I came to a realization that I was missing a lot of substance, but regardless of what I was realizing, I believed that I would be well. And when I began to understand conscious breathing, I believe I had a tool that could help me be well. I believe I could contribute to my healing. And in that, I began to manifest because I started to look at how when I was a child and saying I want to be a pro athlete, I realized I was manifesting. And from creating it, I realized possibility exists. Like I can have it, the unthinkable. So that I was convinced that, right? So when I began to manifest and create the realizations of relationships that I wanted to have when I got well, I began to create it as well. So I wanted relationships with substance. I wanted to have family that I actually, they knew me and I knew them on deeper levels, not just surface. We eat and then we say, well, okay, it's time to go, but to be engaged in real conversations with the people that we say we love. And that's what I was envisioning.
Why you think you didn't have that when you were an NFL player?
Well, because I didn't, it's like, because in a true space, I didn't, what kind of conversation, we have these ways that we are with our parents, we have these ways we are with our friends, we have these ways that we are in our relationships. And why do we have all these many ways? Why can't we just have one way? And this is how, just being in love and sharing love. I think, the roles, I wanted to get rid of the roles. I think so many of us get caught up in roles. And that's why, back to the competitiveness, if you get caught in that role, then naturally, how life progresses, you go ultimately on the decline because the things you used to do, you're not able to do anymore. This is why when we become the veteran, we learn we don't have to put all the anger out. We can actually be smart, start using our mind. We can start using more finesse. We can start using less energy. And you see the young guys coming, even all the raw, and we're just sitting back, like just letting them play themselves. Well, that was us back then, So we became wiser. And when we're wiser, we know how to manipulate the situation to how we want it. And I began to see my life in that such. And I began to create that.
That's great. I think also like what I remembered when I was at the peak as an athlete, sometimes you almost have to have an ego, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's all about me, my training, my food, my sleep, my recovery, my game, my competition. So you kind of distance yourself from other people in a way, right? Because it's all about you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. The ego is something that to be bold and to, make this claim, I'm the best in the league. Yeah. I mean, that takes a certain type of mindset, but it's the energy as well. It's like fear. Like, even as we had this big ego, we also had certain levels of fear, but fear didn't stop us. So ego, we can look at ego in a different way now. We can say, well, since it's the energy, well, I can transform it. So now I can step out and say, I want to encourage 10,000 people. I think that's what you said, 10,000 or 10 million? 10 million, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, 10. So
but every person counts. Every person counts.
Right, but to put yourself out and say, I want to do that for 10 million people. Yeah. That's a boldness. Yeah. But see, again, you're doing it for purpose. Yeah. And again, like I said, that energy can be transformed. As we used it as when we were younger, it was not necessarily the highest way to use it, in essence, but now we're using it in more of a conscious way. Yeah. And that's when it becomes very powerful. Yeah.
Can you walk us through that day when you played that game, when you injured yourself?
Yes.
What was your mindset that day before the game? Let's talk about before the game. You're walking out there, you're gonna play this game.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything from that day?
Yeah, of course. I had just moved to Jacksonville I wasn't happy about it. I didn't really like Jacksonville. So no offense to if anybody's from Jacksonville, listen to this. But I was in New Orleans first, and then I wasn't happy about leaving New Orleans, and I went to Houston. I didn't really like how that turned out. And so Jack Del Rio was coach there in Jacksonville, and I said I'd come and play, but I just didn't like the city so much. And we were a young team, so I knew we were not playoff bound anytime soon. So I was in that mindset, right? And we were playing our first home opener. We were playing the Buffalo Bills, and making a tackle I made a million times, and it's just one of those days. I had made it. I mean, so many times this tackle. Like, I was keen on the play. I knew the play. I was trying to anticipate making a bigger play off of it, and then I came up an inch short, and I was able to just hit him really good. But then when I hit him, I ended up on my back, and my journey began. They diagnosed me with a spinal contusion, and I laid there not able to move. I didn't move for a while. I learned this concept of meditation and mindfulness, and I've been on my journey for about almost 12 and a half years now.
So did that injury made you realize that you didn't want to play football anymore, or you couldn't play football anymore after that?
Well, when you take your neck out of the equation, because it's such a vital tool to play a football game, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
My neck, But I realized I couldn't hit with it anymore, and the linebacker position requires that. Yeah. So realizing I can't use my head to hit like that anymore, I can't play the game, So now, trying to hold on to the identity, trying to think, the mind, and thinking like I want to play, and my body being accustomed to that. That was a challenging deal, and I say fortunately and unfortunately. Well, let me say it first. Unfortunately and fortunately for me, I found meditation to be my treatment, because I didn't have really treatment like to deal with the mental stuff of dealing with it's like a fallen soldier, if you will,
Yeah, we're gonna talk much more about meditation, because I am into meditation a lot, and I believe that meditation is gonna be what yoga was maybe 10, 15 years ago. It's gonna explode. Mm-hmm. And we're in a city like Los Angeles. Here already like 80% of my guests, maybe 90, they meditate. All high performers in different fields. But I think it's gonna grow into the masses as well, because we need this in our lives. But how does that feel? You've been taken out of your game, and you not only lose your game, you lose your income, you lose your identity, you lose your body. How does that feel, and how did you work with that?
Well, it's like, how do you not? It's like the game just put me in another game, the game of life, the real game. I look at the sport world as fantasy even, and so it takes us sort of out of the real game that we're actually in the whole time. And that's the relationship with just life, being on the planet as a human being. So it actually made me see it a little bit clearer. It wasn't necessarily a survival concept. I was just in the unknown. And in the unknown, I was learning concepts of patience, compassion, and just the subtlety with myself, understanding how I had constantly put myself in harm's way. So my relationship with myself wasn't really a stable one. My body didn't trust me. And we don't tend to really look at it like that, but that was what I was actually going through. We've compromised ourselves on so many different levels, not even knowing, because of miseducation for a lot of reasons, but it's just not even knowing. And so that relationship and how it looks with self, is something that we have to, in my opinion, when we cultivate ideas of love, it first has to begin there. Yeah. And that's what I was beginning to do and realize. I look at meditation actually as self-development. A self-growth of like our vision and perception of ourselves.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you think you got the medicine that the patient needed? Do you think it was a reason that this happened, or just chance?
Well, I don't believe in coincidence. Like, I don't believe in coincidences, just you and I meeting. I believe everything happens for purpose. Obviously, we've taken the baton, and I always say the teacher who's teaching, whether you're teaching addiction, well, you become the addiction teacher. If you've been traumatized, you become the trauma teacher. And it's whatever, because we are the medicine ultimately, you know. And when we do it for ourselves, it just trickles out to everyone else. Yeah. It's just the nature of it. And I believe there's an intelligence there. And if we access it and tap and pay more attention to it, I begin to believe that we can create solutions for our problems. Yeah.
So true. And it's so interesting to just talk with you and to look at you now, because you seem so at center and peace with yourself. And I was looking through some picture when you were playing football. You don't get me wrong, you look good then too, but you look more aggressive in a way. Now you're more like, wow, I know who I am.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this journey? When was the first time you meditated? And as a football player, was that weird? The first was like, I don't need to do this shit. Yeah. Or how did you feel?
Well, for me, again, I learned in the hospital. Yeah. So it was like one of these things. I had to be open, and I had to realize that my healing was the most important thing. And so, like kind of like a plane, you know, trying to take off, and you got all this baggage, and you know, to really take off because the gas is low, we got to start letting stuff go. So I didn't have time to compromise, well, but this and that, and say, no, I want to hold on to that. No, it was like every moment was vital. And in my mind, my meditation practice, conscious breathing, intentional breathing, realized when on the inhale, the diaphragm pushes down, the exhale, it pushes up. And I'm bringing oxygen, nutrition to my lower abdomen, which is creating life force, prana, chi, and it is filling it through my body. That was my main intention. And every second counted. So I didn't have time to wish and wash it in my mind and say, but this. I was focused on solely the mission, and that's flying.
Yeah. And who taught you this the first time?
Well, the nurse, she actually mentioned to me conscious breathing. Yeah. And she's like, do you know what happens when you breathe? And a lot of times I start my class like this, because we have an intelligence that's happening in us already. Do you know what happens when you breathe? And most of us don't. So when you don't know what happens when you breathe, you're still going to breathe. But what kind of intention can you do when you understand it as a tool? What can happen when you understand it, when life is, you know, giving me something, an obstacle or you know, a challenge even. Now, when I breathe, how can I sustain myself with my breath? Can I, you know, am I going to be reactive, or am I going to be more contemplative? So I began to see the result of breathing like that. And it changes the game for you when you think like that. Yeah.
When was the last time you were really, really angry?
Really. I mean, come on. Like, you know, I get angry. Jeez.
Can you get angry?
I'm not like a, but you know, anger and those are real emotions. Yeah. You know, it's so funny. I'll tell you this story. I went to Nepal. I studied with Osho in an Osho commune. So it's funny because there's a documentary on Netflix called Wild Country about Osho. And in the hospital, I began to learn, you know, about teachers like Osho, J. Krishnamurti, people like that. I found this book, Art of Loving. But anyway, in Nepal, at this Osho commune, we do this practice called dynamic meditation. And it's where you do a lot of shaking, but then you do a lot of yelling, like anger just coming out, just, you know, like let it out.
Yeah, feel free to let it out.
Yeah.
We need to wake people up. It's almost 10:30 and people are not working here at WeWork. Right. Yeah, feel free to let it out.
But it's just like you just like letting it all out and you're rushing it out. And then what happens when you just let it all out? You come and find stillness. And it's a beautiful thing. I do a lot of work like that with the veterans, because as a warrior, you have that in you. And a lot of times what enables us to be still is all this that we're holding and compartmentalizing in our bodies. So sometimes we got to just shake it and just rewire our bodies and let it all out. And then we find stillness.
So what are your biggest challenge right now in your mind that you're working with? And how are you working with them?
Well, you know, again, the challenge is opportunities. And it's opportunity to discover, like, what's possible? Like, what's possible for me? You know, and in that, I created meditations at the White House. I've worked with Congress. I've created concepts with medical. I actually created an integrated healthcare component with this group in Texas, the Brown Family Health Center. And I go into the office with the primary care physician, and I prescribe a holistic regimen for the patients. Yeah. So I see patients like a doctor see patients. And I'm a football player from back in the day, and I teach mindfulness. To be able to create things like that, we created a component with the University of Rochester to work with veterans, PTSD. I'm leading all these different doctors from all the different Ivy Leagues and, with degrees I can't even pronounce. I'm just a football player from back in the day. So the ideas of what we're able to create is it's like when I was a child saying I wanted to do something that 0.001% make it. Well, I'm discovering what that looks like in my life as Keith and realizing I have a new business. I just started Meta Nutrition. Is a pharmaceutical, well, not a pharmaceutical company, but more as a alkaline supplement company. And we use these for healing processes. We use this for cleansing processes that, in my opinion, give us an optimal opportunity for our health and for healing. So we're doing things like that and just discovering all kinds of ways of even doing business, because now I believe the mindfulness process don't just stop in my meditation, but it's like creating new ways or new paradigms of doing business in interaction with, the company owners to the people who are working for the company, creating more of a conscious way that we interact and do business. It's it's a constant evolution. And so what's possible for us, the sky's the limit. We're infinite. We're that Ferrari, just ready to gas up and just hit it.
But what's the point of meditation? Can you just talk us through that? Because I believe in meditation, and I know a lot of people do. But there's also a lot of people that it's good, but it's not for me. Or they try, they take a couple of breaths. It's like, nah.
Right.
Let me look at my phone again.
Yeah, I love those types of people. Those are my favorite types of people because I consider those people, they're the more left-brain people. They're the more linear people. And so because I've been linear, I can connect to the linear concept. I can connect to the person who's attaining and looking to achieve because I understand the dynamics of what you're really doing it for. Yeah. I have a class I teach about accessing your greatness potential. And a very interesting thing is if you've never been told that you're great, and great is just a verb or adjective, just in this sense, you could replace it with beautiful, smart, tall enough, whatever you want to replace it with. But if you were never told this, then you automatically assume that you're not. And so you go through life not knowing and trying to prove that you are, And we don't have to do that anymore because we already are. And I want to share with you that you are. And all you have to do is create a commitment, an idea in your mind, and see yourself doing it, and it's attainable for you.
Yeah. So how do you feel about? I tell a lot of people where I'm writing about and what I'm talking about. I usually talk about being content and being grateful is not the same as not being able to do new things or grow. Because when I tell a lot of people, I'm so grateful with my life, but how can you grow then? Mm-hmm. A lot of people ask me, but I say, it's not the same thing. It's actually a blessing to be grateful of what you have or how you look or what you do, but you can still go after other things. What's your opinion about that?
Well, what you'll find, in my opinion, is that a lot of our words that we use, because you understand through mantra and meditation, words, affirmations are powerful. But the problem is, or the situation is that a lot of our words that we use as our power have been defined for us. And they haven't been defined in our own interpretation or in our own choices, but we're carrying the burden and the pain of the people who continue to carry these words not knowing. And so now we begin to define these words like you're doing for gratitude for yourself and your life, where you've redefined that word. You made it fit for you. And what a lot of other people are doing is using these words that have been told to them. So they've never made it fit for them. So they're not even living their own existence.
And why do you think that is, that a lot of us are just living a life? We wake up, we go to our job, we go home, fight with our spouse, and then go to sleep, and then just paying our bills. Why do you think there's so many people that are living that life, and why is it not fulfilling?
Well, I mean,
Because it's the way we've been told to live, right?
exactly. It's patterns. You know, you start to see your patterns, and you see it's reason why they compare the human being or to a seed. It's like the discovery is when you go buy, like say if you want to grow an apple, and you go pick up seeds from the store. Well, the seed doesn't look like on the cover. It shows you what the apple's going to look like. It doesn't show you a picture of what the seed and how it looks right now. So that's really what we are. We're a seed, and we're living the same parallels to the people who created us, our mothers and fathers. So we're living their existence until we begin to create a new way that we want to live. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just being able to acknowledge that, to make choices from that, and decide one way or the other, what do you want?
What has been the most difficult things for you breaking out of being known as this NFL player, the athlete? And I think people are still referring you to the I am right now, but maybe you're so much more than just a NFL player, right?
Right.
And how has that been to evolve as a person and be seen as something more, especially in your own view?
Right. Well, the thing is that like how I look at it is I'm not defined by anyone's diagnosis.
Yeah.
You can tell me I'm this or you tell me I'm that. It doesn't faze me because I know who I am. I can be that. I can be all of it. I can be none of it. It's just what I'm choosing to be. I don't in another way you can look at it. Someone can say a doctor can give a patient and diagnose a patient with cancer. Well, you can claim it and keep it, or you can say, well, that's what you're saying. And I can realize the patterns I created in my life to create cancer. Now I can undo those patterns in my life that I've chosen and heal myself from cancer. So it's again, it's the attachments to certain things, and I don't have to be attached to it. People are going to say all kinds of things about us in life, but when we're attached to these things, it can pull us one way or the other. That's life, and it's life happening. And again, I know who I am. I'm building, like I always say, this concept of equity. If you put equity in the building, you own it. You don't have to prove, hey, that's my building. Hey, that's my building. This is my building. I've worked hard for this, and it can be satisfying. I can be fulfilled in my own way.
But how do you detach from that? Because it's so difficult. Mm-hmm. I know as a martial artist, when we talk about the samurais always think about death. Mm-hmm. And knowing that you're gonna die makes you be able to do so much more because mm-hmm. you're grateful in this moment. Mm-hmm. And for some people it sounds strange, but I like to think about that and know I have to be in this moment, because if I'm attached to an outcome. I remember as an athlete, when I was attached to winning, mm-hmm. the only thing I could get was being very, very pressured, nervous, and even if I won, it was just a relief, not any fulfillment. Mm-hmm. But the times when I was in the moment, like I am now talking to you, if I won or not won, it was a fulfillment because I felt alive. I felt in that moment. Mm-hmm. What are your opinions about that?
Well, this present moment is all we have. Everything else is a blessing. But in another context is I have a lot of conversation with people when it comes to diet, and people who come from places of ideology, my parents, for instance. I love talking about my parents. But, we have a practice, I like to even call it a ritual, of praying over the food we eat. Yeah. Sunday afternoons after service, we have dinner and then we pray over the food. I'm like, you know what? Consider this. I'm saying if you go and take the time to get the proper food for nutrition and prepare that and create that for yourself, well, you can skip the ritual because you did the work. It's all about perception. And it's not, and what I've learned in this day, for me, it's not about all the talking. It's about doing. Yeah. And when you do, again, your works speak for you. You can actually learn how to, manipulate the words to express it in certain ways, and that's beautiful. But it's about doing, because you're doing, in your doing, it allows you to harvest. and then they say, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's something interesting over there. That's different, you know? And again, you still don't have to be attached to that.
Yeah. The attachment to outcome, it's difficult though, right? Especially for an athlete, don't you think? Because weren't you attached to outcomes all the time?
Yeah, but see, that's athlete is past tense.
Yeah.
It's past tense. I'm a human being with the capability to be an athlete, and I can do athletic things, but I'm so much more than that.
Yeah. What else are you?
I don't even know yet.
This is so beautiful. Keith, you're amazing. I can see that you have spent a lot of time with yourself and with your breath. Can you help our listeners and viewers with a couple of tools, what they can do to start with their breathing, start with the meditation, maybe affirmation? What would be the tools that you would like to share with us today?
Okay, I got something. You know, I like to try new things. Like, say, for instance, you know, with your mind, right? You have to kind of go into your mindset. Like, you know, we've kind of made ourselves linear because we've been on the planet for so long. So we're like hardwired, like that's a chair, and we're stuck to that idea of the chair. We kind of got to go back to when we were like, you know, teenagers, or not even maybe beyond teenagers, like when we were like 8 or 7. When we were playing with sticks and we thought they were swords, right? We were looking at the rock and we're so enamored with the rock, you know, and our minds were just so expansive. And now we look at it and like, that's just a rock. So we got to go back into that mindset, right? And so when we have this boldness that comes out and we want to speak our piece, like say I grew up in a traumatic situation, maybe even with my father, and I wanted to heal that relationship. And I had this little voice in my mind. It's like, don't tell him you love him. Don't say this. Don't show weakness because, you know, you thought you would be weak. And I would force myself to do it, right? So when that comes up, that fear for whatever it is you want to do, you know, I like to like draw a circle in the ground. And like when I step into that circle, I want to feel things or think about things that I've achieved. And I think about that, and I'm hold that space of in my body how I felt when I achieved those things, and then I step out of it, right? And then I think about something I love or I want to love, and I step back into that circle, and I feel, and I think about those things that I want to love, and I want to feel from that exchange, you know, whatever it is. And so, and when you hold that space, and when you feel that fear coming up, draw that circle. Draw that circle for yourself, and then you step in it. And the things that we just discussed, the things that you want to love and the things that you felt love with in the past, the things that you've achieved, when you feel that in your body, then speak from that place. And that's going to enable you to sustain. That's going to enable you to stand in that intention that you want to share, whether it be speaking your ideas of truth, vulnerability, whatever it is, standing in a sense of, I can do this, right? My voice can be heard. I can speak. You know, a lot of times people have a hard time speaking. Draw this circle in the sand, and then and this is another key. When you take it home with you, because you're gonna make it smaller, and you're gonna put it back on your index finger. You're gonna carry it with you. And so when it comes up again, you're gonna draw that circle. And you're gonna step in that again. So that's gonna be the practice. So hopefully you can remember that.
I love it, yeah. Otherwise you can go back and listen again. It's great. I love it. I'm going to try it myself.
Okay.
And as far as breathing and meditation, what could be an easy way for people to get started with that?
Well, breathing and meditation. Well, again, you know, meditation, there's so many ways you can do it. You can do it in your car. You can do it in an actual seated practice, but you can do it in a chair. Like we can just like sit up in a chair. I like to always get the posture because, you know, in sports, when you see someone slumped over, you know their body posture is telling you they're showing weakness. They're showing like a not committed, you know, idea. But when they're standing strong, you're like, okay, it's gonna be a long day.
Yeah.
So posture shows the commitment, right? And you just begin to breathe from the belly on the inhale. Exhale, and maybe we hold it at the top on the next one. Inhale, hold it, and exhale it out. And that can start your meditation there. It can be, 30 seconds, it can be a minute. And just go into how you feel, go into your body, scan your body with your mind. and just reflect on it and just give yourself that attention that you need and just see what your body's saying, see what your mind is saying, seeing your thoughts. And you don't have to attach to the thoughts, but just see them run. You
So
know?
is the goal to be non-thinking when you meditate, or what's the goal?
Well, your mind, you're processing so much information, the mind is going to run. It's like a computer. It's like you go into different sites, your mind's remembering the sites, and all the bits of information you're picking up, your mind is going to be processing it. So your mind is going to run. Now, the thing is that we don't have to attach to it, though. So when you begin to attach to it, now you're identifying it, and it's feeding your body with these thoughts. And that's where we go, in a sense, wrong. Now, let the mind go, and the things that serve this intention, because we have to also think about intention. What is my intention? And I like to basically start off with, what do you want, right? What are you creating in your life? If it's love in your life, then you're living to choose to be in love, and whatever it is you decide. And so when the thoughts come that align with your intention, then you can attach to that. But when the things come that don't align, then you just let it go. It's okay to think, but marinating in thought, that's where we go wrong.
Yeah. And do you do visualization when you meditate as well sometimes? And how do you do that?
Of course, it's again back to that child mind we had, because that was a creative mind. We were so creative. We were like, wow, and Amber with the simplest thing. We didn't have to have the smartphone to be, entertained. We didn't have to have Facebook. We were like, that's a rock, and this is a flower. This is like a bug. We're like looking at the thing, simple things. We're in Amber with. So the things with our minds, we have to consider to access that more, be more creative, because I believe that's also how we get stuck. We get stagnant with this linear thinking, and we get so hardwired, like this is how it is for me. And it doesn't have to be, it's just how we've given ourselves the opportunity. Now we can create new opportunities by saying, okay, well, this is what I've allowed myself to, it's like, say, for instance, if I'm going to a club and I'm dating women that I find in the club and realizing, well, wow, my relationships end up not so good. Yeah. Well, then maybe we consider where we're going to find the women that we're going out with. Yeah. Maybe we go to a yoga class or meditation class. And not saying that may be a better choice, but I'm just saying that you may get a different result.
Yeah.
So it's just an idea to change our patterns and create a new experience for ourselves and see what happens.
But what would you say to people that say, all of this is good, but I have bills to pay, I have a job to take care of, I have kids, I have this and that, and it's like, I just don't have time. Mm-hmm. What would you tell them?
Well, time, again, like we just gave you an idea of a meditation can be 30 seconds, and ultimately the time is for you. It's like we have this idea that we want attention from someone else and we need this attention from someone else, but when we can actually give it to ourselves. And then by doing that and creating this relationship that we build for ourselves, it gives us an intuition of when someone else is wanting to do it. Is it really authentic? So we begin to educate ourselves by actually creating the standard for ourselves. And that's pretty powerful. And then you realize, well, I don't need that much attention. I can facilitate myself. And then it gives me another intuition of how to share it with someone else. So now we're building the relationship from the first position, the most important position, and that's with self. And that gives us all the tools, just like we mentioned earlier, of how to share with the world. It's like we medicate ourselves, and it automatically medicates, the people and the things around us that we want to do.
Are you more loving than when you were an athlete?
Of course. Of course I am now.
Have you seen an effect in your relationships because of that?
Well, relationships are going to always be a little, because it's out of your control. I've seen myself be able to show up in a different light. Yeah. To take responsibility for my actions. In this, I see the dynamic of relating to someone else. It's just like anything. We create a commitment. Some people may tap out sooner than the other, and then we have a disconnect. But again, I think the experience in being able to be open to have that connection and love again is something that's crucial for it. It feeds us. If you don't have an idea or an opportunity of loving your life, then what's the point of being here? It feeds us. It's important for us. So I want to always be open to it, but the dynamic of the dynamic of relationship is imperative to two people to maintain that commitment when all the other things around us are, the distractions. Being in Los Angeles, there's so many distractions. It's hard on relationships here. So it's like, to be in this type of environment and to stay the course it's
a challenge.
You got your 50-50 chances, you can go this way and go that way. So
are you open to so you're open for love, and what would you say to other people that are afraid of letting people into their lives?
Yeah. Well, you begin to be malnourished, because ultimately when you look at I talk about the food chain and talk about how, a lot of things are dictated from malnourishment when you start to really get into nutrition. It's like when I'm starving, I need food in my stomach. I'm temperamental. I'm quick-tempered. I'm but then I get food in my stomach and I'm like, okay, I can relax again. Well, then you understand that dictates your consciousness. Well, the same thing is when we don't allow that one connection that we really just crave of just having that one, we begin to build, we get 2, 3, 4, 5 people to substitute that one ultimate connection. We begin to try to build a connection, So we create these traits and patterns in our lives that take us on other places that we really don't want to go. We just really want that one thing. It's like we go buy the cars, we go get the houses, so we can, say, don't you want me? You think I'm good looking? You think I'm attractive now? It's like, it's just that one thing that we want. It's just like that connection. Yeah. And we realize in opening ourselves to that, we don't have to do all the dancing and all that extra stuff. It's just being open. Yeah. And then we can have what we want. And then we can still attain those things. We can still have the cars, but we're not defined by the cars and defined by the homes. Yeah. We're defined by what's inside and choosing to be that.
I love that. So, Keith, how do you work with goals and goal settings? Is that important to you?
Yeah, definitely. Goal setting is a great place to really be able to see your progress, see okay, I have this practice and how has it allowed me to get from A to B to C? Am I loving better? Am I creating new opportunities of living in the world and creating in the world? Am I creating businesses? How am I evolving? What are my conversations like? What are the music I'm listening to? How am I living and vibrating on the planet, Yeah, so goals and those things are awesome bars to set.
How do you work with goals? Do you write them down? Do you manifest them? How do you follow up? What's your tools?
Yeah, I write them down. I write them down. I put them on the walls. I make it my mantra. I think about them every day. In another form of goals and how I look at it is so interesting because I learned it from a teacher. He's like, and I do this a lot with kids, and I can do it with the bigger version of kids too. We call adults. But let's set a bar. Just write a check. Pull out a check, and then put your name on it, and then put $1 million in the amount box. Because the check is good until you cash it, right?
Yeah.
So you fold it up and put it in your pocket. Yeah. So there you go. You're a millionaire. Yeah. Set the bar of being a millionaire. Not from from the pure dollars, but the bar of how you hold yourself accountable on the planet, how you position yourself mentally and perceive yourself on the planet. That kind of millionaire.
I love that. I love that you take your life seriously. Yeah. That's why I'm so glad to meet with people like you, because I saw when you come in, you take yourself seriously. You look fresh, you're well dressed, you're coming in here, showing up.
Yeah.
You're not showing up too late, or you don't have that much hair now, but hair everywhere. You take care of yourself. Yeah. You take your life seriously, and this is not a facade.
Yes.
This is who you are on the inside too. I believe they say don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, I believe so too, but that's the first thing you see, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't take yourself seriously when you look yourself in the mirror, and start loving yourself no matter how you look, you don't have to look like everybody else. We're all different, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody is beautiful, I believe. You just have to see it yourself no one else can tell you, because even if they tell you beautiful and you don't believe it, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
We have to see it ourselves.
Yeah.
But one thing that you said that got me thinking, like how you live in. I don't remember where I heard it, but was one guy always asked his I think it was his son or his some, how you living, son? Like how you living? And I think that's a question we should ask ourselves more often. How you living?
Yeah.
Because life is precious.
Yes.
And a lot of times we don't live well, and the only reason is ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we wait until that moment when we have everything, it's not going to change.
Right.
Because tell me if I'm wrong, you had it. Like you were an NFL player, you had the houses, the cars, and it's all great to achieve that dream. But internally, to be happy is something different, right?
Yeah. It's defining it for yourself, and you know your truth. We like to hide it, and we like to keep it on the back burner, if you will. But we know what we're going through, and it's to be able to go into it and address it, and to allow yourself to cleanse it out. That's why meta nutrition is one of the things that we promote as a cell cleansing component, and because transformation starts with a newness. Like the massage therapist, she finds the scar tissue, and it's like we can't start the healing until we break through the wounds, the hardwiredness, and so you got to get to that solid foundation, get to the bottom, and then you can find your truth.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm just releasing a book about morning routines, and I'm a little bit curious about your morning routines. Do you believe mornings are important? And what do you do in the mornings?
Wow. The first thing I do in the morning, I drink about 24 ounces of water.
What time do you wake up?
I wake up about 6 a.m., and I just start with my water. I start with my herbs. I have music. I have ambiance type music that I play. And I just kind of, meditatively speaking, just move through my day, start thinking about things that I, want to, create and accomplish, meetings, whatever, things I'm teaching, things like that. And I just take it one step at a time. I don't think like, I got the whole day. I got 5-6 things on the schedule. I just take it like I start at 9, I go to 10, boom, I just, as it goes. A lot of times we like to compile the whole day and like just burden ourselves mentally with it. And then that creates anxiety. That creates the concepts of stress. Just take it one moment at a time. That's all we have. To be able to live, we have to be able to live now to realize how we can live future. We can't say, well, I'm going to skip the now and then I'm going to live happily in 10 years or 5 years or next week. It's not possible. We have to create the experience now, and then that sets us up for the future.
So what tips would you give to... I'm a victim of this one. Sometimes when I have too much, I start thinking about all the things I have to do, and it gets me stressed. What tips can you give someone like me or someone else who gets that?
Well, the interesting thing, I started writing. I started thinking about, things that are how I want to express, and I started writing, and sometimes I write on the notes of my phone. Just like what I'm feeling, and I started really thinking about that. But that's really it. I just go slow in the morning. I normally wake up 5:30, 6 a.m. I just start out slow and, just let myself unwind and then start my day. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I have one last question, Keith, that I ask all my guests. And I think it's pretty important because we're all about sharing stories, but we want to help the people that are actually listening to take action in their own life, to go after what they want, So what would be your best advice or tool or trick that they can use right now after this podcast to get started?
Okay. So a tool that they can use to manifest what they want. We'll speak it. You have to speak it, put it into an existence. when you speak it, you put that energy into the world, And you also have to, what I have to be mindful of is, because we're the biggest self-sabotagers of self. So you got to realize, and how you put it, you're going to be the one to convince yourself of not attaining it. So you got to trick yourself, really. So not just speak it, write it down. Take a picture of it, of the screenshot, have it in your phone so you're seeing it everywhere you're going. So it begins to just be and ring in your mind, your attainment, like what you're creating. And particularly, these are going to be things like if it's a relationship that you're interested in, if it's a career or a goal that you want to attain, be it. You have to be it. You have to feel it. You have to live it. It has to be authentic. So because that's what's going to allow it to sustain. So maybe you incorporate that, and then you can and see what happens.
I love that. And I even had a friend of mine, he's a world champion in karate. He even changes his password to his goals, just to manifest it.
That's interesting.
It's pretty cool. And I remember most of the things that I have written down as goals and dreams, they've happened,
Mm-hmm.
Because of course you can't just write it down, you have to work for it.
Right.
But if you're a person that takes steps and work towards something, it will have happened in some form.
Right.
Keith, amazing experience sitting here with a wise man like you. It's been a long journey and you're still very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to see you in the near future.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you everybody for watching this and listening in. I can truly say that this was an amazing experience to talk to Keith, a person who has done a lot of things, accomplished a lot of things, and changed his life also to something different, something more spiritual. So this was a great conversation here today. If you enjoyed this, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Share this with your friends and family. That's how we grow. Community is something that is very important for me. And so if we can help each other, help other people, it's a fulfillment that will make you more happy. It makes me happy to do this because I know that you guys are watching it and that you actually can create something better for yourself that can make you a little bit more fulfilled, happy, or changing something in your life that you don't enjoy right now. Thank you for that, and thank you Panos for sponsoring us. It means the world to us. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.